Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give everyone a couple more minutes to make sure that everyone's audio is connected so that you can all hear me. All right, I think we're good to get started. Hello and welcome to the first session of our Female Leadership Series. The Women and Girls Task Force is incredibly excited for these monthly sessions and so happy that you're able to join us tonight. My name is Janice Kugel and I'm the participation lead at Sport Nova Scotia. I'm also a rugby coach, an athlete, a board member, and like many of you, a female leader. I'm so honored to be the lead for the Women and Girls Task Force and the MC of the event this evening and to learn from all of our presenters over the coming weeks. In addition to Sport Nova Scotia, I would like to thank the following partners who've helped shape this extraordinary event: the Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, Support for Sport, Nova Scotia Gaming, and the Government of Nova Scotia Communities, Culture and Heritage. On behalf of the Shattering the Glass Committee and our partners, I'd like to acknowledge that our offices are located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are aware that many participants may be joining from all over and welcome you to share in the chat box where you currently reside. A few housekeeping items before we get started. For the duration of the panel, please turn off your camera and mute yourself to reduce background noise and feedback. During the breakout portion of this evening, we'll invite you to turn your camera back on. If you haven't already done so, if you change your Zoom viewing to speaker view, you'll have a better experience. So this can be done by clicking the gallery view button at the top of your screen and changing it to present view. Also, if you haven't already done so, please change your visible username to your full name. If you have any questions at any point in the time, please direct them to the chat box. If you want to speak aloud, simply use the raise your hand function or indicate so, and we'll call on you when we have time open to speak. If you'd like to submit an anonymous question or have any technical difficulties, please message our hosts. So you'll see their name is host and then their first name. We have over 100 people registered for these events. So please attend the sessions which you've signed up for. And if you haven't signed up for the other sessions yet, please do so. If you miss any sessions or if you have any technical difficulties, they will be recorded and posted on YouTube to view by a private link. This brings us to our very next slide, in which we ask you to please actively participate in the polls. So we want to know where you're joining us from tonight and what is your role in sport. So you should have a pop-up in front of you. Once we have everyone participating there, you can submit your poll. Great, so we're at 80% voted so far, so we'll give the last few people a few minutes. Right now it's looking that we've got about 42% of folks from the central region, followed closely with the Valley region at 26%. And we have 7 people from outside of Nova Scotia, yay! And 1 person from outside of Canada, fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. And then what is your role in sport? So 65% identify as a coach, followed closely by 41% as an athlete and 20% as a board member. Oh, sorry, 32% as a board member and 30% as a volunteer. If you've answered other as a what is your role in sport, we'd love to know what that other is. So please throw those answers into the chat box. You can find the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Oh, referees and officials. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So I'm going to get Kirsty to close that poll for us. Wonderful. And you can see the results there. Amazing. All right. So tonight's session, first in our female leadership session, Leading with Confidence. Let's get started. I'm happy to announce that we have two absolutely fantastic and inspirational female leaders joining us today. And before they share their story with us, I'm just going to give them a little introduction. First, we have Cher. Cher Smith. Cher's sporting background is traditionally in lacrosse, but she was introduced to wheelchair basketball in 2004 by her future husband and has been hooked ever since. She joined the Nova Scotia Flying Wheels team and became a national classifier for Wheelchair Basketball Canada. She was on the host committee for wheelchair basketball for the 2011 Canada Winter Games in Halifax and has been coaching since 2013. Cher has been a board member with Basketball Nova Scotia for more than 6 years and is Halifax Wheelchair Basketball Association's coach and fearless leader. He was the 2019 recipient of Wheelchair Basketball Canada's Leadership Excellence Award, which is absolutely incredible. Cher also, during her day job, works as an occupational therapist for the Nova Scotia Health Authority and is a world-renowned wheelchair seating specialist. So welcome, Cher. Cher is joined tonight by Cathy Burton. Cathy has been involved in sport all of her life. Cathy participated in a wide variety of sports in her school as a youth and was a member of the Dalhousie women's volleyball team during her university years. During her studies at Dalhousie, Cathy became interested in coaching because of a positive female mentor coach. Cathy has been coaching at all levels of sport ever since. Cathy has coached a variety of sports when she was teaching at the junior high and high school level. She also coached ringette in her community and then as a coach at the provincial level and eventually the Canada Games level. Cathy has been involved in sport at the organizational level and was a member of the Community Sporting Committee and Provincial Sporting Committee. Most recently, Team Nova Scotia's chef de mission at the 2019 Canada Winter Games, which was hosted in Red Deer, Alberta, and is grateful for this experience and the connections which she made provincially and nationally. Cathy is also an educator and a school principal at an adult and alternative high school. Her works in the school keeps her busy, but she still has time to support community sport in whatever capacity is required. Cathy is a member of a family of coaches. Her spouse has been an active and dedicated coach in soccer, both at the community and provincial levels. All three of her daughters have also coached community sport and provincial sport as well. So I'd like to say welcome, Cathy. I'm going to invite Cher to start and give us a bit of her sports story.
Thank you so much. You pretty much summed up my whole sports story. You stole it. Like you mentioned, my sport is actually lacrosse, and that was my sport growing up and my varsity sport. And then as you mentioned, I work as an occupational therapist, and I did my master's in kinesiology and motor learning. And so I was learning all about wheelchair skills training and the motor learning principles behind that came from sport. And then I met this guy who said, "Oh, I play wheelchair basketball. You should come out and try it." So I tried it and then married him. And then he said, "Oh, it'd be really great. Why don't we start coaching? You're horrible to coach," because he was my coach. And he said, "So why don't we do this together so that there's no chance I'll ever coach you again. And then we can go and like maybe coach Canada Games together or something like that." And so we did all of our training levels and then when and I volunteered, as you mentioned, for the 2011 games. And then when we started looking at the 2015 games, I said, "Well, are you going to coach?" He's like, "Oh God, no, I'd never coach with you. We'd be divorced." So I actually ended up coaching with another coach, and it's been a really interesting ride. I think coaching a sport for people with disabilities is really interesting. For folks that don't know, wheelchair basketball is a fully inclusive sport. So we have family members that play together that have disabilities and don't have disabilities. It's co-ed, so that's always a fascinating dynamic as well. And yeah, so through that, I've had just a ton of great experiences and been involved, as you mentioned, as a classifier, but also learning a lot about the sport and really, this is about women and females, and I think that's something I've really really enjoyed in this journey, is just seeing what happens when see what happens positively to girls when women are in the room. Yeah, so thanks for inviting me. It's really fun to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Cher. I'm going to invite Cathy to share a bit of her story with us as well.
For sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cathy. While Cher was speaking, I was scrolling through and I see lots of familiar names. Kids I coach that aren't kids anymore, people I know through sport, an old roommate from the summer games in Winnipeg, Tasia. Hi, all kinds of people there that I recognize, and I really am excited to be here tonight. Janice also summed up my, I guess probably shouldn't have given you so much information on my biography, as you used it all. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. There was really limited sport opportunity for girls during those decades. And to be honest with you, I got tired of jumping in the car to go watch my brother play hockey all the time. But by chance, one day at a hockey practice, because that's all we did in the Valley back then, because there was no real organized sport for girls. I went to the rink with him, and after his practice, a group of girls were jumping on the ice to play ringette. So hugged on Dad and Mom's jacket and said, I want to try that. And I guess the rest is history for ringette, although I did think that ringette kind of disappeared. I'll get back to that in a second. So my next experience to play any kind of organized sport was in junior high and high school in a small rural community. A lot of times limited female coaches, or actually probably no female coaches, and limited coaches for the girls program. So I found myself in my small high school playing volleyball and coaching at the ripe age of 17 because there was no coach. So I had some poor teacher come and sit on the bench with us. That was kind of my first experience with coaching. Now, obviously didn't scare me away too much. But going back to my childhood, some of my most fond memories of sport was the unorganized sport. And we don't give that credit enough. And up behind our house in the Valley, we had what we called the paperboard factory, which had a great big parking lot. And in the evenings and Saturdays and Sundays, no one was working. So we would grab the hockey sticks and the balls and I'd go up, break a couple windows every once in a while and run. But we played a lot of sport in that parking lot. And so I have to credit a lot of my interest in sport to those days. And like I said, as much and as important as organized sport as the unorganized sport was probably where my heart was all the time. So then I became a mom, went to school, went to university, played volleyball at Dow for 4 years. And during that time, I should go back my elementary years, phys ed teacher, I had Dorothy Walker. I don't think I need to say too much more about that. She's a pretty cool lady, my first female phys ed teacher, and I think that's probably why I became a phys ed teacher. And then when I moved on to Dow, I was recruited first by Lois McGregor, and those who know Lois, she's a pretty dedicated, passionate person and coach. So she kind of tugged me into the direction of coaching. I also did my phys ed degree at Dow and then became a teacher. So being a phys ed teacher at junior high, I was coaching everything from soccer to track and field to badminton to whatever it was, both boys and girls. And then I became a mom and I moved out to the school in my community when my kids were little. So I was teaching in Hammonds Plains at a new middle school out here. And I had enrolled my girls in Canskate, great program, but wasn't meant for us. And one day at school, I recognized a group of girls were all huddled around another girl, kind of rallying her up. She was having a rotten day and they all had the same jackets on. So I went over and asked them what team they were with. And when they said ringette, like I said earlier, I thought ringette had kind of disappeared and through my years away from the rink. But this group of girls drew me back to the ringette rink. So I took my girls out of Canskate, put them in ringette, and I guess the rest is history for my ringette journey. So after that, got involved at both the executive level for ringette, provincially and in the community, and I also jumped on the ice and started to coach. Worked with a lot of amazing coaches and a lot of female coaches in that sport, which was great. And then I moved on into the provincial program, and then I coached, assistant coached in 2011 Canada Games in Halifax, and then coached the team that went to Prince George in 2015. Kind of slowed down in coaching a little bit, but got hooked back into soccer, and managed the 2017 Canada Games soccer team that went to Winnipeg. So those are kind of just a variety of experiences I've had in sport. And then of course, Janice mentioned Chef de Mission in 2019, which was an amazing experience. I actually did see a mission staff on here, staff hi. In 2019, we froze our butts off, but had a great time in Red Deer, and got to actions where I met Cher, and lots of other great athletes and coaches from not just Nova Scotia, but across Canada, and lots of great leaders. I remember one morning sitting at the chef's table and noticed that there was more female chefs than male chefs that year. So it's kind of an interesting note to take. And professionally right now, I'm a principal at the Adult Alternative High School here in Halifax. Keeps me very busy. And so my coaching my coaching time has kind of unfortunately disappeared a little bit with the busyness of that job. But still, if I get the call, I try my best to head in to support wherever I can. And that is my story.
Thank you, Cathy, for sharing with us. So tonight's session is called Leading with Confidence. So Cher, I'm going to ask you the hard question first. How do you define confidence? And what does it mean to you to lead with confidence? Oh, Cher, we're going to get you to unmute.
So you weren't understanding all the hand gestures? Yeah.
No, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think as far as confidence and sort of how it applies here, it's when you know, the person knows that they have either the knowledge or the experience or the skills to try. So if you're talking about you know, going on a board, just knowing that you are enough, whatever experience and knowledge you come with, whether it's the I'm going to join this board because I'm new, and not a lot of people on this board are new and they need that perspective, or you know, it could be the other way around. You know, and if you think of it from a sport perspective, it's, you know, I've tried this layup enough in practice that I'm going to give it a try in a game. It doesn't matter. Like, confidence isn't that I know I'm going to make it. It's that I have the confidence to try it. So it's just knowing you are enough, whether it's a skill or experience or whatever, that you're willing to try and put yourself out there. I think that's confidence. It's not that you're going, you're not confident you're gonna rock it. It's that you're confident enough to try. Oh, you're frozen there, Janice. Maybe I'm frozen.
Nope, you're good. I think Janice is frozen. This is Tasia.
Okay, thanks, Tasia.
No problem at all. I was like, this. We'll see how this goes. Janice, you look great if you can hear us.
Yeah, you're happy.
Yeah. Oh, Janice, are you back?
I am. Yes. Sorry.
You froze there for a second. I didn't know whether I froze or you froze.
It was a fun game.
Yeah.
Great. I'm glad we had a fun game.
Yeah.
Janice, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Tasia. And thank you so much for sharing. Cher, that's amazing. And I really love the skills to try. So just if you feel that you have the skills, or you feel that you have a fresh set of eyes, that's sometimes that's perfect.
It's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to throw it over to you, Cathy. Same question. How do you define confidence, and what does it mean to you to lead with confidence?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my years of coaching, where it was the thing to do a philosophy in coaching. And so in applying for different coaching positions or doing your yearly plans, we often talked about what is your philosophy in coaching. So I'll go back to I used to kind of grumble about that a little bit. But as I grew and got a little older, I realized that when you truly know what you believe in and know what your values are and what's important to you, the confidence is natural because it's who you are. So if you truly believe in every child has the benefit to develop at the same as anybody else, and that you're going to make the best effort that you can, leading, whether it's coaching, whether it's teaching, whether it's just being a person, with the fairness of all. If everyone believes in that they can be better, and like Cher said, the confidence to try, then I think as a leader, you're confident, if that makes any kind of sense. So it does come down to knowing who you are and leading, believing in who you are. And you can never not be confident if that's who you are. If you're trying to be somebody else, your confidence is out the window.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips or tricks? What do you do to feel confident in sport, particularly in that board or leadership setting? And I'm thinking definition would have been a new and exciting thing for you, but probably also a little bit scary. What did you do when you needed that extra boost of confidence?
I think a huge thing about leadership is oftentimes people find the word leadership daunting because I think they're in it all on their own. For me, I truly believed in shared leadership. So if I didn't know something, I wasn't going to fake it because I don't know it. I'll get caught if I try to fake it. So I rely on the others that are in my circle. And I say my circle can be quite broad. And in that circle, who can I lean on for those pieces of what I need to do in my leadership role that may be better than I am? And I do that as a principal in a school. I do it as a teacher. I do it as a coach, and I did it as a mother. So I lean on others, like, tell me how do we do this? And can you help me with this? I think that's a huge piece, because not only are you leading with the best skills that you have in your group, with your people, it makes you a better person. So you learn from each other. So for me, starting out, I always thought the number of wins made me the successful coach. And I followed along behind some really great coaches that had a lot of success. When I realized that I wasn't those other coaches as much as I would have loved to have been and had that ability, knowledge and skills, I knew that I could become that. And so I think that's a big piece. It's about being a student of the game, being a student in whatever you're learning, a true student, and developing the confidence along the way. No one's expecting to be the boss, be right every time. No one should be. And if you think that you're going to be right every time, you're in for a hard landing. But I do truly believe that the shared leadership piece is so important in relying on and using the supports that are around you naturally. Support your confidence.
I love that, the shared leadership. It's something that I think comes with time or with experience in coaching or in leadership. It's learning that you don't have to have all the answers to start with. You just have to know that there are other people around there supporting you, even if you may not always feel it.
And accepting the fact sometimes you'll give a job off to somebody else and they might do it differently than you, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. So that's another thing, letting go of some of that. Important. Yeah,
that's a great piece to add. Being able to let go of some of that, even especially for us, OCD types, it's tough. Cher, I'm going to ask you a different question. What do you think some of the biggest challenges that women faced with regards to leadership and leading with confidence?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of positive changes, like Cathy was saying. Like, you look around the room, there are more women there, and there didn't used to be. I think we've seen a lot of positive changes that way, but I think there is still we're still not balanced yet, and we're still not there. So I think there is this, as women, we often feel like, okay, so if the minimum standard is this, we have to have this to be in the room, and we don't. We are enough. We have enough. And know what you know and know what you don't know, and that's okay. Like Cathy was saying, you're not gonna know everything, and the more, whatever the areas that you're looking at, the more you know, the more you don't know. So that acceptance of, I have this, I don't have this, so I'm going to go to my people. I'm going to make friends with people that have expertise in this area, and just being comfortable with not having to know every answer. and having to go in and being expected to know everything right away. I think, and that's our internal challenge to ourselves. You know, I still do feel there are those external challenges of, you know, gender bias that we face. And, you know, we openly joke about it in, you know, work settings and boardrooms and things like that, where, you know, we say, that's a great idea, Christy. Jim, could you please say that so we can all validate it and move on? You know, it's just, we're still there as much as we, you know, not like to be. So I think we have our own internal challenges, and but we also do have some gender bias that we need to work forward through. And the more balance there is in the room of gender, of abilities, of people of color, all that, you know, the more diversity we have in our groups, the easier it's going to get for everyone and the farther we're going to move.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. We've moved, but we still have work to do and we still have a ways to go. So the more diverse we can be and the harder we can work at getting there, I think is fantastic. But we are where we are. So let's work with what we've got. So a bit of a follow-up to that, how do you identify folks to help you lead? How do you know how to reach out to people, and how do you identify who to reach out to for that support?
Yeah. How do I? Intrinsically, I know this. Yeah. I think there's certain things that I look for in people. So, you know, I think of the people that I have around me right now. So again, I work full time. My coaching is just, you know, a fun thing to take up some evenings and weekends. So, you know, I think of the people that I have around me now, they have different skills. So my assistant coach is a previous athlete who I see a lot of potential in him as a human. And I think, you know, he was at the point where I'm like, you're ready to give back. Let me just rope you in just a little bit. And, you know, we had a manager who had been in the sport for a really long time and was looking for a way to get involved again. And so just sort of identifying what are the assets that these people have, and what strengths do they bring. And, you know, at the end of the day, our technical coach, and I mean, you look at us, we're the land of misfit toys. You know, you end up with this group of really quirky people that all have these skill sets, but it's trying to pick who has the time, who has the strengths, and how can we complement each other, because, you know, we all have some pieces that could use a little help. So trying to build a team that way, I guess, is what I've done with this current group that I have.
That's awesome. Yeah. And looking for those strengths in others that you maybe don't possess is fantastic. It's a great way to build a team on the field and off the field. I just want to send out a little reminder that if anyone has any questions for the panelists, we will actually have some time to take some questions. So you can throw those into the chat box, or if you'd like, you can direct message either our hosts. Cathy, I'm going to ask you a bit of a different question. So I'm going to ask you what sort of challenges you have personally dealt with in a position on a board or in a position of leadership, and how have you overcome them? If you feel comfortable sharing that with us.
Yep. Over the many years, there's been a few challenges, and it's quirky and corny to hear it, but those make you better. They're uncomfortable at the time, but they're there for you to grow from, to admit when maybe you were wrong, or stick to your guns on, you know, what's right. I would say probably one of the most significant challenges was a time when, I'm going to try to do this professionally, a time when I was in a position of coaching, and I felt that I wasn't being a position of coaching a high elite level team, where I was feeling that those who made decisions provincially in that sport were working in the opposite direction that I was, and that they weren't completely forthcoming in their philosophy and their, I guess, where they saw my program, which I called my program, which was our program, where they saw the program that I was leading was going. And so it was a challenging fight, because it's the people that make decisions that sign the funding checks, that sign the grant checks, and support the general, I guess, the journey that one would have. So, and we all have those. We'll have people in positions of power, we call it power, that can really pull the rug out from under you when you're not looking or ready for it or don't expect it. When you walk into a sport and think everybody's kind of doing the same thing and we're going to try to do this together. So for that story, it was for that journey that I had. It was really uncomfortable. It was felt divisive. It was divisions absolutely within our sport. It felt that it was some things were being taken personally, not from my end. I didn't ever feel like anything was happening that I felt it was personal to me, but it did feel like someone else was trying to take over. And so it was tough. And again, I'll say that I'm not sure if I handled it the right way. I put my head down and I've muscled through it. And I continued to focus on the athletes that were stepping out on the playing field with where I was and who were showing up for fitness, and the parents that supported the program, and the assistant coaches and the support staff that supported the program, and head down and work together, and not ever let those around you see that it was maybe rattling you a little bit. It's really hard to do. And I continued to say, if I'm doing what's best for the athlete, I can't go wrong, and this can't go wrong. And so it felt like our group was a sort of an island in some regards. There was sort of a push back towards competitive sport, in the sport that I was involved in, and more of a push towards a recreational. And we had kids who had dedicated their entire 10, 15 years in that sport who wanted this opportunity to do it the right way. And so I had to remove everybody else out of my line of vision and just see those girls and try to make that promise, the promise that I had made, to make it happen for them. So sometimes you do feel like you're a bit of an island and you're on your own. Again, I'll go back to what I said about shared leadership. You can't do this if you can't do this by yourself. And finding the people and having them around you, whether it's someone that you call after a practice that's not even on your coaching staff, or eyes outside of your sport. What are you feeling? Good leaders on your team. So having athletes that are taking that leadership role and relying on them and giving them the reins to be their leaders of their team, and sort of muscling through it. At the same time, I did feel things had to be addressed at that higher level. So I removed that, was a separate, it was almost like a filing cabinet. So the team was the team, and then I would deal with that other foolishness, noise, I call it, the background noise that really should just have been background noise, and I put it over here. And when I had to deal with that, I dealt with that without having too many people know the struggles that were happening. So it happens, and if you're going to cower away because you hit a challenge or a wall, then it's a long road and you're not going to enjoy what you're there for. If you truly enjoy it, you'll make it enjoyable for everybody. So that was a tough one. And I tried to keep it professional. So if it didn't make sense, I apologize.
Thank you for sharing that, Cathy. I think every circumstance like that is a journey, but I truly do believe that at the end of the day, if we put the appropriate outlook on it, we can learn from it significantly, but sometimes that's hard. I'd like to ask you both a bit of a different question. How or who do you go to when you have a struggle like that? So is that a family member that you rely on, or do you have a mentor or a coach or another leader that you go to when you're dealing with challenges?
I'll jump in, Sheri, quick. I'm fortunate. You said in my bio, I have a family of coaches, and my husband has been involved in coaching as long, if not longer than I. So he typically is the safe sounding board for me. Sometimes I agree with what he's saying. Sometimes I need to go to a second person. Sometimes if I have to go to a second person, it would be someone who I've coached with before, or the leader on your team, the captain of your team, or maybe even somebody outside of your sport completely. And then, of course, I always rely on my mentors, or an occasional phone call to somebody that I hadn't seen for a year. happens. So it's that finding that trusted person that you can just lay it all out there. And sometimes just as you're sharing what you're feeling, you can hear it in your own voice, you know what you have to do. Sometimes just talking about it, you come up with a solution by the end of the conversation without even having to wait for an answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Cher, who's your person or who's your people?
Yeah, it really depends on the topic. I think in my sport, it's a very close-knit, tight community. So it depends what the issue is, because sometimes my coaching community nationally is exactly who I go to, whereas other times it's exactly who I have to avoid, because the issues are too close to home, and it is province to province and the national association versus what have you. So I think sometimes I go the other way, and I, like Cathy said, I just take a friend who knows sport but not my sport, and just say, bounce the ideas off of, this is what happened. This is, can you tell me what your thoughts are before I tell you where I stand on this? Because I just need someone outside of it to hear it. So yeah, I think it depends on what the issue is. But if it's super heated, I tend to take it outside of my sport, just so I can have a more open feedback on it. And again, often, like I said, you say the words out loud and you're like, okay, this is why I'm going to bat for this, because as I'm saying this, I'm remembering, why we're taking that difficult road, why we're taking the less popular choice. We're doing it for the right reasons, and I just had to say it out loud. Thanks for blinking at me while I spoke. Yeah.
You're welcome. I think that's awesome. And I think that we do come up with those things, and we need that supportive network around us, that maybe it is more than one person. Maybe, this is the group, and these are the folks that we go to when we have a problem with this group. And when we're facing a challenge here, it's the someone at the same level as us on a provincial scale. But sometimes those are the ones that cause the problem. So you've got to have someone else to go to. So I think that's having that network of folks, and not just having one or two, is fantastic. We've got a question here. Have you ever had an experience, and I'm going to put this out to either of you, at the board table or at a leadership table, where you have a parent who just seems to be there only for their own child's participation? They don't seem to care about anything else, and it's just about their child. How did you handle or react to that?
Yeah, I think there's always those issues. I think the main thing is just keeping on top of the issues and taking the person out of the situation. So trying to keep it objective. It's the more sort of background you have as far as policies in your organization, and have those things in your back pocket, that's really helpful. But you're going to recognize the personal aspect of the issue, and you may need to address it, but usually my first line of approach is just keeping it objective and focusing on the larger group and the issues as a whole. Sometimes you do have to have that sidebar, but my starting point is just keeping it objective.
Yeah, awesome. Cathy, anything?
I can jump in. Yeah, teacher, principal, we deal with parents that don't quite get the bigger picture, I guess, probably. And you know what, I can't, parents are learning too. So parents are often learning as they go through the process, especially if they themselves have not been involved in sport. So if you have a parent that's not, has this child in front of them that's not a bad athlete or has been very involved, but they themselves never were involved, they don't know how to navigate through how to be that supportive parent on the sidelines too. So I do think there's some work you have to do along the way to prevent that my own personal agenda. At the board level, it's a little harder. It's typically a lot of people that sit around the board table do have their own agenda and see sports. So the example that I shared with you with the challenge that I had was absolutely an agenda that one person or two people shared versus the majority of the people who just felt that the team just needed to move forward and do what they wanted, that they had set out to do. I would say that it's an education piece for all, and there has to be a lot of conversation around the board table to talk about Involvement on the board is not for your child. You have to park your child at the door, and you do have to look at the bigger picture, like Cher said, and keep the objective piece in the forefront. There are times when parents have to be told straight up that this is not about their child, and that's a very uncomfortable, courageous conversation that you have to have. But they can happen, and it doesn't have to be a fight, and it doesn't have to be any kind of, it doesn't have to get personal. That's the other part. You really do have to park the personal attachment to the side, and move forward. And again, I'll say a lot of times when you have a parent with a personal agenda at the executive board, that is noise. And you know, if the majority of the people sitting around the table are there for the same reason, that one person has to eventually jump in with the rest. But it is tough. It's tough, and it's all very dependent on what the situation is as well.
Absolutely, I
And
agree.
I think your point about the front loading is helpful. If those expectations are laid out before you go down the road. So I think of Canada Games as a perfect example. You know, you've got a group of people that have all these expectations, and there's so much build up to it that what is expected of athletes, what is expected of parents, what involvement is appropriate, what's not. At the beginning, when those athletes are identified, we have parent meetings, we have parent athlete meetings, all of that in the beginning to try and prevent those things from happening. Very different on boards, but you know, in a team situation, the more front loading you can do, the easier it'll make your life.
Yeah, I think the front loading is perfect. And I think, Cathy, the point about if everyone else is there for the right reason, it is just noise. And sometimes it's hard to take that and hard to disseminate that information, because it doesn't feel like it's noise at that point in time. So taking that step back is really important. That's fantastic. We've got a couple questions coming in. So, and just a reminder, if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat box or private message one of the hosts. This is not an easy one to answer, ladies, so I'm throwing it out to you. How do we best address sexist rules enforced by leagues? So, for example, in co-ed softball, if a male walks a female on deck, then it's a double. This individual said that they spoke to the organizer, and the organizer doesn't view it as an issue that's demeaning towards female players. But this person feels that it is, and that may be the case. So do you have any suggestions or recommendations for them?
Have an experience story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about making yourself unpopular and difficult decisions. So I played wheelchair basketball for several years, and then I just found that the league, which is a maritime league, just wasn't driving with those sorts of things, and also persons with disabilities. And then when I was coaching, I was back in that league, and it just became more and more clear that there were significant biases against people with disabilities in wheelchair basketball, and against females. So as the league was losing players, they were saying, you know what, someone with a low pointer, which has a more significant physical disabilities, could be replaced by a female, just to keep the games going. And you just all these rules about like points on the court was basically female or disability, and it was really replacing people with disabilities with able-bodied athletes. And just between the sexist rules and the basically discrimination against persons with disabilities, I finally said, guys, I don't think we can be a part of this league anymore. So the board meeting was the most uncomfortable you can imagine, because us, which was deemed as me, pulling our team out of the league, folded the entire maritime league, which has a massive impact on the development of the sport, on national recruitment and everything. But I felt that that there was no more moving forward, and we had tried lots of other things. We tried to meet with them, and to voice our concerns and to change rules, and it just continued to go the other way. And I, at that point, I felt so horrible, because none of my kids got awards that year because our team was blacklisted, and it was our last turn in the tournament, and I really wondered you know, had we done the right thing? And then I got a call from one of the moms of one of the girls, and she was just like, my girls came home, and like, I just need you to know that they value that you care about being a girl, you know. And so you're just like, oh, right, that's why I'm getting hate mail and all this sort of stuff. And you know, and you know, it's those difficult conversations, those, am I doing the right thing, questioning, you know, talk about leading with confidence. Like 12% I probably went into that, you know, like I knew in my heart of hearts that this is what was the right thing for everyone, but going in with confidence, you know, it was a really difficult thing. So yeah, I just from that, we now have moved that whole this is, you know, 3 years later, I guess we're at now, and COVID's making it more difficult, but we've moved that whole league out of control of the league. It's now gone to the PSOs. It's run, interestingly, Catherine from Basketball Nova Scotia, and in New Brunswick, and PEI, all the PSO executive directors happen to be women, which I think is interesting. And we've now started a whole new developmental league, and the other group are trying to join in, and we're supporting that, given that we don't follow discriminatory and sexist rules. So yeah, so the most unpopular blue-haired person in all of Atlantic Canada for several years. But yeah, that would be a good example of that.
It's a fantastic
from my
example.
experience.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
and
3 years out, it is.
It's hard to do it in the time, and it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but 3 years later, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And
really, when you're the only one that's when you're the only one that's seeing it from that perspective, you know, you have other women on the board saying, what are you doing? You have, you know, other members just saying, look what you're doing. This is, you know, a bad decision. So yeah, that's my example.
That's a great example. Cathy, I'm going to ask you a different question. We've got someone asking for advice on how to not take things personally during conflicts. That's the hard thing to do, and it comes with practice, but we're wondering if you've got any tips or tricks.
Okay, so again, it is very situational. I would say that when you're in it, to not take it personally, I'm going to go back to the very first thing I said about confidence and leadership, that if you truly believe in what your philosophy in coaching is, or leading is, then the decisions that you make, you should never nothing should ever bump you off that track. So that confidence piece, and it doesn't come right away. It comes after lots of times when you've taken things personally. And I would say I've taken lots of things, and sometimes I still today take things a little bit personal. But it really, you have to remain and stay true to the facts. If you attach an emotion to an issue that you have on your team or in your group, and you attach your own emotions to that, you can't help but take it personally. So you do have to try and I don't have any magic trick to take emotion out of it, because we're human and we all have emotions, and that's what makes us such wonderful coaches and passionate people. So I can't take that. I can't snap a finger and wave a wand. It does come with experience. Some people are born with a thicker skin than others. But again, I think, you know, when you know what you believe in, and the decisions that you make are based on what you think is right, and you feel confident in that, I think that taking things personally doesn't make you lay awake at night. I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong with being critical of self, and I'm not sure if taking things personally and being critical of yourself is a bad thing. Again, you grow from that, and sometimes it's really hard to admit that, you know what, I didn't handle that well, and go back through it. Don't beat yourself up, because then you would never ever want to coach again, but to go back and think about, okay, where did that kind of go off the tracks, and be a little bit critical of yourself, but not stay off the tracks, get back on the tracks. I will say, I'm going to go back to a couple of things I've already mentioned about the work that you do in developing positive relationships with all of the people. I used to think I only coach the kids in front of me. I don't have to coach and work with the parents on the side. And then I turned a corner one year and said, yeah, but I need the parents on the side. They're kind of important because they're so involved and so invested. So there's a lot of work that you have to do during the journey with your team or with your parents or with your executives, so that you're working to get to know them so that they can trust you. And if they trust you, you won't take anything personally, and you'll be able to have an open and honest conversation. I used to often wonder, I used to say this, I wonder what they're saying about me. And then, I don't know, there was a magical age where I said, I really don't care what they're saying about me. So that just comes with time. So there's no trick. She's got to wait for that.
I agree. I think that philosophy and believing in yourself is important. And I also think that self-reflection is super important. We don't always handle things the best way or with, letting that roll off our back the first time around. Sometimes it takes a little practice and a little self-reflection, and that is certainly tough. No one wants to be wrong, but admitting that you were is okay.
Yeah, I find too, if there's been something that's just in a quick reaction, I usually, I try to anyway, check. And I'm like, it's usually one of two things. Either they've done the thing that I like least about myself. The other person is you. You're like, oh, that's annoying. Oh, that's why I find that annoying. I do that. That's one of the number one things. They're like, all right, that's it. Or why did they do that? Or why did I react that way? Like, is that exactly what I was hoping they wouldn't notice and they were on it? Or, what was it? So, checking why did I react that way? Because, it comes across as, you can go with why did they do that? And you're like, no, why did I react to them doing that? It's usually one of those, for me anyway, it's usually one of those first two things. Is like, oh, that's annoying. Oh, right. I don't love that about me. That's the other person is you,
Absolutely. I've got a couple other really great questions, but I don't want to forget about our networking portion of this evening. So I'm going to ask you one last question. And if you've submitted a question, folks, and we haven't got to it, I'll ask Cathy and Cher. I'll share those questions with them and ask them if they are willing to provide us some feedback kind of after tonight's session, just to make sure that we've answered everything for everyone.
Of course.
But I want to finish tonight with, as a coach, we have certain reach and influence. As a board member or executive, we may have even greater reach or positive influence on our sport. When did you know you wanted to take that leap from coaching to a board member? And what was the push that allowed you to do it?
I would say that for me, it was a little bit backwards. I did a lot of executive work before I kind of walked away from that to coach. But I will say this, that if you're truly, I think the people that sit around boards, provincially and community boards, have the most impact on the child, every individual child's experience in their sporting field. That if you have the right people sitting around that table and they've done work themselves as a team, because that's a team within a team, that group of people, and if they're all rowing the boat in the same direction, every single kid that plays in that sport, in that group, will across the province, across the country, will benefit and will be in love with their sport. That's where all the hard work happens. Finding the people, developing the coaches, developing your managers, working with parent groups, supporting that parent education piece, providing opportunities for kids to participate in a safe space. Those are all such an important role of our executive. And I would say that, well, and you said in your question, it is the most important piece of sport, and especially at the grassroots and the community level. The elite will take care of itself. The elite or the high performance group will take care of itself. It's how many kids can your group participate, happy, come back again next year or the next season. That's the biggest piece. I think if I was to go back now and sit, and I shouldn't say this because there's people in this group that might be calling me, but if I was to go back and sit at that table, I probably would look different. Let's go back to the beginning of this. I probably look at things differently now that I've gone through and I've grown with the sport. I would look back differently at what's important in sport, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cathy. Cher?
Yeah, I think for my group, you know, it being a small group, I think it was just so important that there was a voice. Not enough people know about our sport. They don't know it's part of basketball, you know, and the awareness. And you know, my hope is that, you know, when anyone has a provincial a provincial basketball event, that they think of wheelchair as part of it. Because we have so many athletes that don't know they can play. We have so many family members that don't know that this might be the first sport they can ever play with their sibling or their parent. And I just think it's a missed opportunity. So I really want there to be a voice, and to be an awareness that it's a really fantastic version of a sport that we all know and love. And I think I just keep having to go, hey, we're here. Just a reminder, you know, we exist, and hopefully that will come. So that was what the drive was for me, is I wanted to have a voice.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think that that's important. Our voices are important, and we get to remember that. And if you think that is needed at a table that it's not there at yet, I think it's important to step in there and believe your philosophy, and believe the way you know the things that you know, and step in. So a big, huge thank you to both Cher and Cathy again for sharing their stories and for answering all of our questions. We're actually going to move to a bit of a networking session for everyone. So I am posting a link to a Jamboard. And those of you who don't know, it's a Google online software. You'll be momentarily invited to join a breakout room. Please say yes to moving. Once you're in your breakout room, you'll have about 10 minutes to get to know the other ladies in the room and play around with Jamboard. So a virtual whiteboard for collaboration, as you can kind of see this picture up here on your screen. Your breakout room number and your group number are one and the same. So if you're in group 1, your breakout room slide number 1. You will find your own Jamboard in the slides, and you can move the slides using the arrow found at the top of the screen. You'll be able to use the Jamboard tools found on the left side of your screen to reorder your name, or to record your names on the slide and share other information. What we'd love for you to share while in your breakout room in the 10 minutes is your name, your sport, and your role or roles, and why did you choose to come today? If you've got time, we'd love to know who's a leader in your sport that you admire. I'll give you a 1-minute warning just to bring all the rooms back together for a wrap up. But take the time, make new connections, meet some new inspirational ladies, and maybe you'll find a new mentor. So just bear with me here a second, and I'll get you organized for your breakout rooms. All right, ladies, here you go. All right, well, welcome back to the main room. And I just wanted to say a quick little wrap up and thank you. I will leave the boards open on Jamboard for the rest of the week. So you can go in and you can add in the information or put your contact information in there if you wanted to exchange contacts with the other ladies in your group. Great opportunity to just kind of meet folks, and we're going to try and have those with each of our sessions. As well, Kirsty just posted in the chat box that if you didn't have a chance to speak, please type your answers into the Jamboard. I know 10 minutes feels like it could be a lot of time, but at the end of the day, it truly isn't. So once again, I want to say a big, huge thank you to Cher and Cathy for being with us this evening, sharing their stories and answering our many questions. And just a little reminder of our sessions upcoming. We've got a session every month for the leadership series, and that'll be the second Wednesday of every month at 8:30 p.m. And then we have our coaching sessions on the fourth week of the month, and those are either a Tuesday or a Wednesday evening at 8:30 once again. You can see the sessions up here, and then our next sessions there. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Keep up the amazing, inspirational work. You are all leaders, whether you feel like you are or aren't. Just being here makes you a leader in your sport, and you are doing incredible things in your communities. So for that, we thank you. Look forward to seeing you all again in another session. I will send the recording out to everyone when it becomes available, usually between 24 and 48 hours. And thank you for everything that you do and are doing for sport in this wonderful province of ours. So have a great night.
Thanks so much for having us. It was just an absolute honor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks.